Welcome back to Pain Free for Life, where we share how to successfully overcome all kinds of chronic and extreme conditions to live happy, productive, pain-free lives forever. And now, here's your host, co-founder, and board-certified holistic healthcare practitioner, Dr. Rob Vanbergen.
All right, Yvonne, welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you here.
Hey, Rob, I am excited to be here. Thank you for the offer. And I think we're going to make an impact today.
For sure. And that's what this is all about. And I know you work with nutrition and you also work with microcurrent, and you believe that this is a match made in heaven. So let's talk to start with about some of what you think are the biggest misconceptions people have about vitamins and supplements.
Certainly. So probably the biggest misconception, there's two, and I think that they're probably almost equally as important. And the first one is what type of vitamin you pick up. There are whole food vitamins made from foods of the soil. And then there are those that are designed in a laboratory. And so they take out specific nutrients, lab design them, and then present that to you. So that's the first thing is, when somebody's looking for nutrition, I always encourage, yes, you're going to pay a little bit more, but the results, they're actually synergistic because nothing has been removed. Unlike most lab design, it's a singular. And no vitamin can do anything on its own without minerals. And so oftentimes, the companies make the assumption, all right, you've got the minerals already in your body. And this, let's say just the B vitamins, which are so crucially important. If there are little nutrients in the body, the minerals act like Uber drivers. So imagine, we know that there's over 80 minerals in the soil. To date, they've stated that 60 of those are essential. The body can't make them, and we can't make any of the minerals. I think when technology figures this out, all 80 will be required for the body. But they act as Uber drivers. Minerals do two things. They will help all the other nutrients, and that would be vitamins, amino acids, essential fatty acids, and or your omegas. They'll help those move into deeper into not just getting into the bloodstream, but literally now, because you got to be able to transfer from being in the blood to transferring into the tissue. And then, of course, much like our microcurrent, transfer, into and reach our batteries, those mitochondria, and actually feed them. It's one thing to stimulate them with our devices, but it's another thing to actually feed them. And then probably the second thing that I think is so important that people understand, it's not my opinion, and this isn't conspiracy theory, but the amazing benefits of nutrients are in fact being squelched. They're being suppressed. There's little to no money being utilized for what we all have decided must be the gold standard, and that's clinical trials. And you and I are working on a clinical trial as we speak, and it's already so difficult to even get that passed that practitioners are aware of this. They say that they throw out 1/3 or greater, in these clinical trials. But, hey, if we get a clinical study out of this, we're just going to prove the efficacy. But I just want to shout out with a book right here. It's called Freedom of Informed Choice, FDA versus Nutrient Supplements. And when you begin to understand what's being hidden. It's just going to make you make better choices for those that are, making those choices. So those are two things that, I think and those are actionable tips right there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I see this as such a big problem as well. You mentioned clinical trials, and it's the first thing that anyone skeptical about what you're doing asks. Well, do you have any clinical trials? As if it's just as easy as just like, quickly whipping up a clinical trial and throwing it in. It's incredibly regulated and very costly to get these
Yeah.
in front of people. And it is oh so important. And we do try our best to do this, but for whatever it may be, like however I look at it, I always think, well, we know that for our wound healing clinical trial, it costs over $500,000 just to get these universities to pick it up and do it. And that's for one thing. And you have
Yeah.
times.
And if they pick it up, because they're not getting paid much.
No, no, they're not. So they have to be willing to pick it up. So you're putting all this money into these trials. And this is where I think you see like all these massive clinical trials around medications. And it's because they can just throw so much money at this problem to solve it, right?
Exactly. Well, and Big Pharma says, you want my big stack of cash for your research. It's going to look like this. And oh, by the way, we're going to put somebody on the board to make sure that you utilize our funds properly. Nothing wrong with that, but who's in control?
Yeah, it's the one of the trickiest games to play, I think. It's just trying to be in this clinical trial space. And I know, as you said, we've been working on this one clinical trial here together, and we've been trying to do these other trials as well. And I would love to just have a trial for every condition. It would be amazing to be able to say, "Hey, look at all the success we get," because we know we'll get the success. But
Yes.
it's the time and it's the cost and it's the, as you say, the biases of big pharma and where you want to go with that. So let's talk about, we'll just change gears just a little bit here and talk about tissue types. So there's four basic tissue types in the body, right? Could you explain these different tissue types and how they relate to chronic issues?
Absolutely. Well, as you likely remember in school, and anybody can go look this up. Um, and if I remember, I'll get you a video, which I think is really good. It's called The Four Types of Tissue, and you can watch that on YouTube and begin to learn. So, there are four basic tissue types. There's epithelial tissue, muscle tissue, nerve tissue, and then connective tissue. And they each and all play, a very, very clear role in how the body works. And they say that 80% of all conditions actually come from one of these four. And so, it's crucial to understand how they play. If you want, I'll just do a brief about that, or shall we move on? I know sometimes I'm such a researcher, I can kind of go, go too deep.
No, go ahead. Go right ahead.
So like when we're talking about the epithelial, this is the surface of the skin. It's also the external and the internal lining of organs. So like in our microcurrent, right? Sonobio 90, that's for restorative of organs, say like, kidney and glands. Now it's interesting because about 70 to 80% of epithelial tissue is protein. So nutritionally, protein can impact those organs just like our frequencies on, the microcurrent. Next would be, well, actually, I was going to say connective tissue, but I'm going to save that for last because that actually innervates with most everything else. Then there's muscle tissue. You've got three types of muscle tissue, skeletal, cardiac, and then smooth muscle. These are made up of fibers and they're surrounded by the connective tissue. And they actually help with movement of muscle, both the involuntary and the voluntary. They help the processing of digestion, moving down the track, whether that's moving the food, waste elimination, obviously, breathing, speech, blood circulation. And as I say this, I got to tell you, I'm thinking of all the modes that we can impact with microcurrent. We can help with breath and speech and blood circulation. And, like with the Avasia, repair muscle using frequencies that are around, 14 hertz. Now, for muscle, the most significant portion of muscle tissue, they say dried muscle tissue actually is water. It's something like 70 to 80% water. And then the other is 20 to 30% protein. And then there will be some fats. But, again, a beautiful marriage like we talked about earlier. Then there's nerve tissue. Now that consists of neurons, and then glial cells. These help transmit signals. They bring information back and forth. They're your little communicators. Um, and, this is like neurotransmitter function, which I think, we were maybe part of that. We were part of that beta testing when you did gamma. And I think it was just gamma, but that was about depression, anxiety, PTSD. And then, of course, out of that one, we found that a ton of people it was nearly 100% got better sleep. Am I right?
Yeah, nearly 100% got better sleep. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And now it's important, I love the brain health modes that we have in our home device, that gamma and alpha that we're talking about. While these do work directly on nerves, and that can make a big impact. I think that's Sonabio too. But nerves, different than muscles, and particularly the myelin sheath, that's what isolates the nerves. And like when you've got electrical that's jumping off, it's because that myelin sheath, it looks a little bit more like, Swiss cheese. And, that innervates or isolates the nerves, but it comprises um, mostly of fats. Those lipids, your good fats, omegas 3, 6, and 9, the cholesterol. These are significant portions, 70 to 85%. The research shows is the fats, with protein actually being a little bit smaller um, portion of that. And then, of course, there's connective tissue, and connective tissue, that's why I said let's save that for last, because it surrounds all of the other organs. Even a good surgeon knows, we don't want to touch that, which I'm going to call the matrix or the fascia. We don't want to touch that. But the connective tissue is mostly collagen, protein, and amino acids, plus obviously the other vitamins and minerals, but it is wrapped around everything. And, microcurrent, we have treatments that will aim, at the tissue repair, reduce pain. There are those out there that will do, I think they don't call them connective tissue massage. I think they call them fascia.
Yes.
Fascia release. And so while they can do that, and even our microcurrent can relieve chronic pain, inflammation, we really got to be thinking about adding the nutrients, because the one thing that microcurrent can't do is replace missing tissue. it can utilize the nutrients that are currently in their body, but imagine if you flood the body with these additional food substances or you're talking to me, and I do believe we cannot get enough in with our food that by supplementing. I've got a lot of my clients that are doing amino acids just to alleviate muscle wasting.
Hmm.
And the majority of connective tissue is comprised of protein and collagen, and they say it's somewhere around 80 to 90% of collagen is the protein content.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because as you're mentioning the different types of tissues, I'm thinking the same thing. I'm just like, this is the frequency for that, and this is the frequency for that, and it just goes through the different cycle because it is all so interconnected, and there is almost nothing you can't repair as long as you have those building blocks in your body.
Yeah, and I've seen way too much. I mean, even before microcurrent came into my life, which has been about 8 years now, I was actually seeing things with clinical doses of nutrition that, people were told this cannot be helped. We can't heal or repair or whatever verbiage was used. Now, what I love about all of these technologies is that I saw things happen so much faster. I mean, the healing curve just truly, just expedited, accelerated the change. And imagine, my clients are in discomfort for a reduced period of time just by adding these tools.
Okay, there's so many nutrients and everything out there, and people obviously are thinking to themselves as they're listening to this, well, which one should I be taking? So, what are the top nutrients that you think everyone should focus on?
Well, this is where it gets exciting. Get your pencil and paper. So there's tons of research out there. I'm gonna focus in on one that I've gotten the best result of. And I'm just gonna share two that are fairly popular and just kind of let you see the differences. So there's a book out there, and, oh gosh, I'm looking at my stack right here because I completely forgot to pull it out. Drawing a blank right now on the name, but, I think it's called the China Studies, and they talk about having 1,000, autopsies, to, share their information about, nutritional, effectiveness in the body. And that drew me in because just as a reminder, when I was in the military, I mean, I worked everywhere from, the OR to assisting in autopsies. And that's where my love of the sciences came in. So I am a researcher. There's another study out there that went from the 60s to the 80s. And do you remember a guy by the name of, well, you might not, but Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom?
No, I'm not.
His name is Marlon Perkins. And not only did he own zoos, but he also is a very large, prominent insurance company. And, he actually, it started with some problems that were happening in the zoo. And ultimately, he took this information and applied it to life expectancy for humans. So, what is, basically covering all mammals. Um, we do know that there's nearly 100 essential nutrients. They've been identified as essential. And this is what I want you to understand about essential. Essential is the body cannot make it. And they noted that without it, there was tissue degradation. There was little tiny tears happening. But when they put that nutrient back in, whether it was selenium or like we know, the omega-3s, uh, absolutely helped repair. And of course, a lot of the cereal companies here will use this, and they'll use the word heart healthy.
Hmm.
So the research is there. That particular research covered over 10 million tissue samples, 10 million blood smears, and it extended. Ultimately, there was a break, but it did extend into the late 90s and early 2000s when they were looking at Keyshawn disease. But ultimately, it's like 37,000 autopsies. And when they put these nutrients back in, they saw those tiny tears actually begin to, kind of sew back up. And so those nutrients that I think that are most important are those essentials. If you don't do anything, and I'll just say 60%, so there's 60 minerals. Reminder, minerals come from the soil. There are 16 vitamins, and vitamins come from the sun. Now, granted, there's more minerals and there's more vitamins. These are the ones that were deemed or logged as necessary, essential, key to not only life, but in my case, like when I had some cartilage damage, rebuilding the tissue. And then there are amino acids. There's 12 of them that are considered essential. And they're actually going to be very different, say, than a bodybuilder. So a bodybuilder does these branched chain amino acids, and some of them are not actually essential. So I focus on what we're not making ourselves. Because if it's like a recipe, if we can put the right ingredients in, if you and I were baking a cake, and we had the same ingredients, and let's just say this is going to be about size, because size does matter. You had the right amount, a tablespoon and a half of baking powder, but I only had a teaspoon and a half. You're going to have a cake, but I'm going to have a crepe. We had the right ingredients, but again, size matters too. Different size body mass needs more. You likely weigh more than I do, so you're going to need a larger dose of nutrients than I might take, or my mom. She's, just about 95 pounds. She's not going to need as much. So again, we've got nearly of those 100, 60 of them are minerals, 16 of them are vitamins, 12 of them are amino acids, and then the last are those good essential fats, those omegas, 3, 6, 9. And our body does make cholesterol, but cholesterol actually is also a key nutrient for brain health, organ health, any sexual dysfunctions, both male and female. There's some nutrients that you can take to the bank, in my opinion. And in my, I have over 2,000, over 2,500 of my own clients that we have, kept track of, and these changes do occur. And again, once you start adding these technology to it, they're just happening faster. And I don't have a client for as long as I used to. And that can be a quality problem to have, but at the same time, it can be tough, especially as a practitioner.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, how that happens? And I know that as some practitioners have even kind of said to me, they're like, I don't know if I really want to, do this if it's going to be like, am I going to lose all my clients, right? And it's like, well, no, because as you've seen, right, word of mouth will bring you more clients for every client you result
Yes. Yes,
every single time.
absolutely. And I get to now see the families. So that right there is its own referral, so to speak.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right. So you've kind of already mentioned this idea of soil and what might be missing from the nutrients. And I think, there's definitely something huge to that. And I think this is where this idea of the hidden hunger phenomenon comes in. So would you be able to explain that and just kind of educate people on what this problem is?
Yeah, so hidden hunger is not my terminology. You can look this up, but it really is extremely simple. Um, we are not um, malnourished. Well, we are malnourished. We're not calorically malnourished, but nutritionally malnourished. And so it's the difference about, yes, we're getting food into our bodies in the American standard diet, but there's no nutritional deficient, or there, excuse me, but there's no nutrient density to all of these packaged foods. I was over in Europe this past year, and it was very interesting to me to see the different food choices that were on their shelves. The amount of packaging was almost nil. If you walk into one of our supermarkets, it's like it is a big box store, even if it's not one. And the outside perimeters will be the live food. And I've heard numbers like the outside live food is 20%, and the other, let's just say 70 to 30% is packaged food. That's food that is, they've taken a piece of food, processed it, and it appears to be food. But between the chemicals that we have that you guys do not have, nor does the Asian or European countries have, this hidden hunger is, yes, we are feeding ourselves, but we are still hungry. I've got my certification in amino acids for brain health. And in that particular program, if you look up anything that Julia Ross is doing, it talks about how when we become nutritionally deficient in the brain, in those neurotransmitters, not only can there be emotional or behavioral or cognitive challenges, but there'll be cravings. Clearly, there'll be cravings. People say, but I eat, and they'll list off what they eat. And a lot of it is carbohydrates. And you just heard me go over those 4 basic tissue types.
Yeah.
If you noticed, protein and fats, the body is made up of protein and fats. We can actually make our own carbohydrates if we get enough of the protein, fats, and water. We're 70+% water. People really are not taking that into, say, serious account. Of course, you and I, we're always hydrating our clients, especially with some, I do like a salted or mineral water, so that we can get that connectivity, with our microcurrent devices, because we're looking to tap right in. And, water is a conductor for electrical. But yeah, I think I got off a little bit, but did I answer the question? What was the question?
Yeah, I think it's interesting though, right? Because it does differ so much in different places in the world, and Canada's kind of like this weird mix of the U.S. food style and the European, because we get a lot of that stuff from the U.K. But if you put even 3 different packaged foods, all identical, but from the States, from Canada, and from the UK, and you look at the ingredients, right? It's like so many kind of medium to like 1 or 2 ingredients in those like final ones.
Yeah, and I've actually seen that. And something to really think about, here in the States, the EU, they have numbers, and even the insurance companies, they talk about this. 8 out of 10 deaths, take out accidents, but 8 out of 10 deaths have a nutritional deficiency associated with it. And, we are here in America, I believe we are the 42nd or the 43rd country that, 43, 42, 43 other countries before us have better health and a longer lifespan.
Yeah, the average lifespan gets a lot higher when you move over to Europe and Asia, right, than it does over here.
Well, no. Well, yes, yes, yes. They are living longer. Their nutritional deficiencies are not like what we have. Deficiencies. Yeah, and then of course it comes with symptoms, and I can't remember if that's one of our questions, but Yeah, nutrient deficiencies exacerbate.
Yes.
They exacerbate life.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the last question I was going to ask you today was, with the research you're doing, how do you find that ties into the key nutrients and also ties into hidden hunger as well?
Well, it ties in. So let me just back up for a minute. Our body's talking, but are we listening? I don't, and this is my opinion. We haven't been taught to listen. I wasn't taught to listen. When I was working in some of the largest military hospitals, that was a question that I rolled my eyes at. I didn't understand it. Um, and so how does that tie in? Because one, our symptoms are like, the warning lights on our cars. They're giving us a signal that something is going awry. And by addressing them, nutritionally, we can begin to turn around those deficiencies. I think if you understand, like I have a survey that I have people take so that I can begin to see what is their because the symptoms are key to what of those four basic tissue categories are we dealing with? So when they take the survey, they can see, oh, my largest, now, while they may have a couple different tissue issues, my largest, and actually the largest, will be calcium and mineral deficiencies. That's for, pretty much a blanket statement because calcium is over 2% of our body weight.
Mm.
It's used in all types of ion transferings and etc. But I mean, you can experience cellular changes by adding these, and so by understanding those, understanding how the two work together, it's kind of like we talked about before. It's actually a recipe.
Yeah, a recipe for success. And that's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, like I said, I was doing nutrition before I came across any technology. Microcurrent was the first that I came across, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. As a matter of fact, we've talked about this before, but I thought I was being punked the first time I saw this in action.
Yeah, there's so many things I think when we see that, like, especially on training courses, some of the changes you can see in one treatment with a patient, it is unreal. So someone that's never experienced that before, you're like, there's no way, as you say, there's no way this is real. To see someone get up off the table and be like, wow, it's completely better, it's gone, or the realignment of the body, all of these things, right?
Yes, yes. And then, again, and I think you'll agree with me, microcurrent cannot replace missing tissue. You put in the nutrients, per your body mass. So, just recognizing the label is not about your body mass, it's about what is the recommended dose. And those are like, here's enough for you to survive the day, not maintain my current status, not thrive or rebuild, just literally, here's enough maybe to survive the day. And then, of course, if you're taking medications or you have other health challenges, the body's going to utilize that up. So rebuild is, not likely to be seen for a while, if at all. Um, and so, I love this marriage. It's stunning, between biology and technology, and I know personally my protocols are always both. You got better eyesight with microcurrent.
Right.
Uh, I actually tried improving my eyesight based on recipes that I was given, and nutritionally, I couldn't do it. I believe I maintained because I went several years without changing my eyesight. And then when I got introduced to microcurrent, I started adding microcurrent to what I was currently doing. Uh, Little bit of changes, but when I beefed up my nutrients and did consistently, there's a key word, consistently did my microcurrent goggles. You might remember my glasses, my prescriptions were a 4.0. I took it down to a 2.5. Today I'm a 1.75. And if I get off my duff and treat myself, I might actually be like you and go without.
When we see eye stuff is so interesting as well, because that is the main one I've always pushed so hard on the nutrients with, because whenever someone comes to me and they say, Rob, I didn't get the benefits that you said I'd get with the microcurrent. It's like, are you doing the nutrition? Well, no. Like as you said, this is just proof. You need the nutrients if
Yes.
you want to repair. You can't do it if you have none of the building blocks.
Exactly, exactly, and we can treat all of those surrounding, nerves that are coming to the eyes, but if they don't have, like you said earlier, the building blocks, I mean, it can certainly maintain the health of the eye, but, the body's gonna be reaching and looking for, additional building blocks. I tell my clients much like, I don't know if it's like this where you are, I'm pretty sure it is. A lot of our construction work on our freeways happens at night.
Right.
Things are quiet. You flood the body with the nutrients. Maybe even consider doing one of your treatments closer to the evening. Let the eyes rest while you're sleeping. It's going to be able to pull from those resources because otherwise, those resources are being utilized for my daily, expression. I'm using energy right now just talking to you. My nutrients are being utilized to provide me with this energy to be with you rather than if I'm sleeping, it can go in and utilize some of those supplies that I gave it for the actual rebuild.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. It is. So, all right, Yvonne. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. We got lots of good information. I'm sure people are going to be taking a lot away from this. So yeah, it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. And I hope I gave you some good tips and you take some notes.
Yeah, absolutely. And to our audience, I'm going to include Yvonne's information at painfreeforlife.com/podcast. So until next time, I'm Dr. Rob Vanbergen, and you're listening to Pain Free for Life.
Thanks for listening to Pain Free for Life. Be sure to follow us, share the show with family and friends, and leave us a review on iTunes. Every time you share the show, you are helping someone take their life back from pain. Visit painfreeforlife.com for more resources, including our free guides to microcurrent, the Hache protocol and inflammation, as well as our blog and online community full of people just like you, successfully overcoming all kinds of chronic and extreme conditions to live happy, productive, pain-free lives forever. And stay tuned for the next episode of Pain Free for Life.